Now that you know what plasma is, let's compare it to other cutting methods. Here we see just a few of the different methods to cut all kinds of materials. By the way, we have the equipment for all of these at GoCreate. So why use plasma to cut? Central to this is the material you are cutting, whether it's wood, plastic, or metals. Plasma only works on metals. Metals conduct electricity, which is how plasma cutters work. Now, it can work on both ferrous and non-ferrous. Ferrous metals are those that can hold a magnetic charge. Non-ferrous metals can't hold a magnet, like aluminum or stainless steel. So we're cutting metals with plasma, but there are lots of other ways to cut metals. Plasma is much cheaper to use than a water jet. If you've ever seen the water jet cutter at GoCreate, you know that it's a very large and expensive piece of equipment compared to the relatively small and inexpensive plasma cutter. But not only is a plasma cutter cheaper to buy, it's also cheaper to operate. Part of the operating costs for any piece of equipment are something called consumables. These are parts of the equipment that get worn out during use and have to be replaced, kind of like tires on a car. Plasma consumables are relatively inexpensive. Now, GoCreate always makes sure their equipment and consumables are serviced and fully operational. Other things to consider are the weight and portability of the equipment. Just as we discussed with the water jet, which is extremely large, heavy, and not portable at all. Oxygen gas is a very popular way of cutting, but its equipment involves carrying around several pretty large gas bottles. Later, we'll discuss the differences in how they actually cut. But here we're just noting that the plasma cutter is relatively portable. But it does require electricity, where the oxygen gas cutting does not. Another consideration is material thickness. Plasma cutters cut much thicker material pretty easily. Now, there are huge industrial laser cutters that can cut pretty thick material, but here we're discussing the thickness of normal shop equipment. Now, lasers can also cut metals. A GoCreate laser is a little bit smaller than an industrial laser and can cut metals up to about 1/10 of an inch thick. Let's look at some of the negatives of plasma cutting. Of all the usual cutting methods, plasma cutting has the widest cut path. It's not suitable for intricate cuts. Also, plasma cutting produces dross or slag. Now, this will need to be chipped or ground off. Now, proper cutting techniques can leave less dross, but it will never completely go away. So some chipping or grinding will be required. Now, sometimes plasma cutting is used to cut metals to their rough shape, and then other machining methods are used for the final design. So in these cases, the dross doesn't matter because it will be machined away. Another consideration is the type of material you'll be cutting. Plasma cutting is limited to only conductive metals. Now let's look at the major parts of a plasma cutter. Let's begin with the tip of the handheld torch. Here we see the components of the tip. Remember from earlier that some of these parts are consumable, that they wear out and they must be replaced repeatedly. The tip is one of the most important parts of a plasma cutter. Course videos will go through the tip components in detail. Then there's the air compressor. This supplies air to the tip. Now, some plasma cutters have the air compressor built into the portable unit. For these models, only electricity will need to be supplied. This is true for the portable handheld plasma at GoCreate, like you see here. It only needs an electric cord, not an air compressor, because it's built right into the machine. Although plasma cutting with air is the most common way to cut with plasma, other gases can be used. Other gases can improve the cut quality of specific metals. Stainless and aluminum are usually cut with nitrogen or argon. At GoCreate, most of the time you'll be cutting regular mild steel with the plasma cutter. To cut other materials, you'll want to consult with a GoCreate mentor. Now let's look at the power cord. The smaller plasma cutters use 110 volts. The bigger plasma cutters use 240 volts. You'll be able to tell by the plug what is required for your equipment. At GoCreate, we use a 240 volt handheld plasma cutter. Now let's discuss the ground clamp. As you know, a ground clamp is required to complete the electric circuit. Now it's always best to clamp the actual part being cut. But if you're cutting on a metal table and your part is laying on that table, you can sometimes get by with just clamping the table. For better performance, make sure the ground clamp is within a foot or so of what you're actually cutting. Plasma cutting can be dangerous, so you must follow some safety procedures. There's some very unique safety concerns with a plasma cutter. Of course, electrocution and fire from sparks are kind of obvious concerns. But also, plasma will give you a very severe sunburn. It's a radiation burn. Now, we don't say it can give you a severe sunburn. We say it absolutely will give you a very severe sunburn. You must protect all your exposed skin. Also, some materials create poisonous gas while they're being cut. And this requires ventilation. Now, some materials like magnesium will explode if you cut them with plasma. You must know what you're cutting. Anytime you're working with a new material that you have no experience with, you must consult your GoCreate mentor. You must wear a full face welding mask. Goggles are not enough. You must protect not only your eyes from flash burn, but all the skin on your face from radiation. Your GoCreate mentor will show you how to adjust the settings on your welding helmet. You have to make sure that it's set to protect you from the radiation of a plasma cutter. You will need to cover all your skin with heavy protective clothing. Polyester and synthetic fabrics like it are easily flammable and can melt onto your skin. GoCreate has several welding jackets, but if you like, you can bring your own or your own heavy shirt or heavy jacket. And as stated, don't wear light tennis shoes. The dripping dross or slag will burn right through them. You can get severely hurt. You should wear heavy leather boots. Now, gloves are required. Now, these aren't your normal gardening work gloves or the gloves you get down at the Home Depot. These are heavy leather welding gloves. GoCreate has many available for you to use. Some materials create poisonous gases when cut. Your workspace should always be well ventilated anyway, but when working with these materials, you must take special precautions. often including a gas mask. Anytime you're cutting any of these materials, you need to let your Go Create mentor know in advance. Remember that a plasma cutter is extremely powerful and can cut right through an expensive work table. So watch what's under your plasma tip. Since the plasma flame can reach 50,000 degrees, the metal will be extremely hot after cutting. Even heavy gloves won't protect you. Let it cool down. You think that all this would be common sense, but you need to take it extremely seriously. Never, never, ever put your ground clamp on the piece that's going to be cut off. So now let's look at how to actually use the equipment to make a cut. What's the proper way to use it? Now, before turning anything on, you need to look up the settings for the machine for the material you intend to cut. Plasma cutting with a hand cutter is very much an art, and you'll get used to fine adjusting the power settings. However, as a beginner, you'll need to use the settings table to get you in the right ballpark for the power. You will need the settings for your specific equipment. Now, there's going to be an online link to them in this training course, and your mentor will also be able to point you to them. Now you need to check the consumables on the tip. If they're worn and you continue to use the plasma cutter, you could severely damage the equipment. Now you can go through the steps of getting your equipment turned on and ready to go. Now that the equipment is turned on, let's trigger the spark. You do this by touching the tip to the metal and then pulling the trigger. But in order to pull the trigger, you'll need to have to flip back the safety shield that covers the trigger in order to pull the trigger. Now, once the spark starts, the plasma, then you can begin cutting. Now, there's no way in a video to actually give you the skill you're going to need to make a cut. This will come with practice. However, watching a video of a professional doing some cutting and their tips and tricks can help out immensely. So the next step is to watch this great video of a professional actually plasma cutting. Now, this is a 21-minute video, so you're going to want to maybe take a break before watching it and then sit down and get comfortable, but it's really a great video.